Just 3 weeks before the election, Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore has lost his communications director. John Rogers has confirmed he's quit the campaign, but he didn't say why. In a statement, Moore's team says Rogers made the decision to leave last Friday. The campaign says it has nothing to do with the allegations that he sexually harassed or assaulted at least 9 women, including some who were just teenagers. Moore denies he did anything wrong. Last night, President Trump finally broke his silence on the allegations. Many Republican lawmakers have said they believe the accusations are true and that Moore should step aside. But the president came to his defense.
Roy Moore denies it. And by the way, he gives a total denial. And I do have to say, 40 years is a long time. He's run 8 races, and this has never come up. We don't need a liberal person in there, a Democrat. Jones, I've looked at his record. It's terrible in crime. It's terrible at the border. It's terrible in the military.
CBS News political director Steve Chaggaris is in Washington. Hey, Steve, thanks so much for joining us. Now, Steve Moore is now fundraising off of the president's words. Do we know, is this actually going to help the Republicans' chances in Alabama?
We don't know that for sure, but I mean, look at a couple of things. First of all, Trump is way more popular in Alabama than he is in the rest of the country. There was a poll in September that showed him with a 59% approval rating in Alabama, which is much higher than the rest of the country. So you got to figure that that will have potentially some effect on things. Secondly, more and more people that we're hearing in Alabama, the longer this goes on, seem to be taking the side of Roy Moore, which has some Democrats worried. I was talking to some Democrats earlier who feel that from a political standpoint, this scandal being revealed 40 days or so before the election, perhaps the impact of it may peter out by this December 12th election. And so it's not just the president, quote, endorsement or whatever you want to call it, but perhaps that voters are coming around and maybe not totally believing the story and coming around to Roy Moore eventually. It is a very Republican state. Trump won there with 62% of the vote in 2016. There are just a lot of things that could be working in Roy Moore's favor despite the scandal.
Interesting. Now, of course, the president has been criticized for his support of Moore, but did he actually have any good options here? It seems like he was forced to choose between supporting an alleged pedophile or risking this Republican seat in deep red Alabama.
From the get-go on this thing, Republicans have been telling me there are no good options for any Republicans here. The president, I guess, could have let this thing play out. His original sort of response to this was, let's let the people of Alabama decide, before he weighed in yesterday. So that could have been another option for him. But there aren't great options for Republicans here. So if Moore loses, they lose a seat. That means their majority in the Senate becomes tighter. It becomes 51-49 as opposed to 52-48, which it is now. And if they win the seat, this is a guy, Roy Moore, who has said from the get-go, even before this scandal, that he's not planning on working with Mitch McConnell. In fact, he said he wants Mitch McConnell removed as Senate Majority Leader. So this is a guy who's going to come in, even as a Republican, and stir things up for Republicans. So not a great scenario on either end, no matter what happens for the Republicans here.
But Steve, we are having a bit of a moment right now, this hashtag #MeToo moment. Do you think that the president perhaps missed an opportunity to capitalize on that?
Perhaps. And, you know, I think people look back at this, they look at this and they look back at what happened to the president while he was a candidate last year with his issues about sexual harassment allegations, and wonder if this was an opportunity for him to maybe try to turn the page on that or turn the corner. And he didn't. In fact, he sort of doubled down on it. And people are now raising the question. So this is a guy with questions in his background, and now he's supporting a guy who critics will say is supporting a guy who is a pedophile or is an accused pedophile. So, yeah, not really on the Me Too moment there for President Trump.
But we know sexual misconduct is a bipartisan problem right now, and there's a scandal also rocking the Democrats. A second woman is now accusing Congressman Conyers of harassment. How are Democrats handling these types of allegations against one of their own?
Yeah, it's interesting. So with Conyers and with Senator Al Franken, the Democrat from Minnesota, there are no calls for resignation for either of these guys. It's more about they're saying they're really disturbed by this. You're hearing calls for more stringent changes in the rules of the House and Senate about how to deal with these kinds of things. There are people calling for ethics committee investigations on both sides. And in fact, the House Ethics Committee has opened an investigation into Conyers, but that hasn't hit the level, at least among his colleagues for calling for his resignation. Now, his hometown newspaper, the Detroit Free Press, did put out an editorial calling for him to resign, but his colleagues aren't there yet.
Well, all of this is going on in Alabama and Washington. Down in Florida, the president continues, of course, to tweet from Mar-a-Lago. This morning, he attacked LeVar Bell, the father of one of the UCLA basketball players detained for shoplifting in China, calling him a, quote, ungrateful fool. He also slammed the NFL for considering letting teams stay in the locker room during the national anthem. Why is he doing this? Is this a play to his base? Why go there right now?
I love the question of why. It's hard to answer the question why with the president in any specific case. You just sort of take out the specific, put a blank there, and it's the same response with this president. It's always tweeting against people who disagree with him or issues that he disagrees with, and tweeting in a way that is very aggressive. And I always point back to, if you need some light reading to do over Thanksgiving, Paula, pick up The Art of the Deal, which came out 30 years ago, and turn to page 58. There's a section in there where it's called Fight Back, and he says, when people treat me badly or unfairly or try to take advantage of me, my general attitude all my life has been to fight back very hard. Well, guess what? LeVar Bell was on TV criticizing the president. What is the president's knee-jerk response every single time for the last 30 years, at least his entire career? Fight back really hard. So where's the way to do it? Go on to Twitter and criticize. And so that is, I think, what we see here pretty consistently with the president.
Lastly, of course, Senate Republicans are hoping to vote on their tax plan next week. Let's talk about where are they in terms of garnering support for the plan at this time.
So right now, the Senate Republicans can only afford to lose a couple of votes on this bill when it gets to the floor, but they are not there yet. I mean, they're probably about a half a dozen votes away they're probably about a half a dozen votes away from either people saying no or undecided on this, and so they got to work on shoring those numbers up. A couple things going on here. One, you have the deficit hawks, conservative Republicans who say that this is going to cost too much, and we're going to figure out how it's going to cost less to the American taxpayer. And then, of course, the Senate has added this Obamacare mandate repeal to this version of the tax reform bill. There are some Republicans, like Senator Susan Collins, who are not for that, and so they're expressing some misgivings about this, and perhaps might not be on board if that's in there. Senator Lisa Murkowski, a Republican from Alaska, who is considered somebody who might not be totally on board with this, is fine with the Obamacare mandate repeal being in there. She said that yesterday, so that's a positive for Senate Republicans who are trying to get this through. But right now, they're still several votes short away from getting this done. There'll be a lot of changes, I suspect, before this goes up for a vote.
Steve Chaggaris, thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul.